cross-examination, or it's not just forgetting plain text anymore. Everybody in the right place? Okay. What do you think is, at least at the high school level, but even so at the college level, the most underutilized and overabused portion of the debate? Cross-examination. Cross-examination. In reality, cross-examination is one of the most important things in the debate, for several reasons that we'll cover in just a bit. But first, I want to talk about what the goals of cross-examination are. Goal number one, to figure out exactly what your opponent is trying to say. Goal number two, to try to get your opponent to admit something that helps you in the debate. And finally, goal number three, to win debates. Now, we'll talk about these goals, and then I'm going to go over the cross-sects of each individual speech and the way you should proceed. What's goal number one? Right. Inevitably, there's going to come a time where you're going to hear an argument that you've never heard before, or an affirmative that you've never heard before. And cross-examination time is the only chance you get to get them to explain the argument in a way in which you grasp it and you can successfully defend against it. For example, people who run critique apps, and it's a critique that you've never heard before. You're going to have to spend some CX time figuring out exactly what their argument is. If you can't figure out what their argument is, can you successfully defend it or defeat it?
No.
No. You have to understand what their argument is. What's goal number two? Yes. CX just isn't about, what does your plan do? Or, in your own words, could you please describe your advantage to me? It seems almost funny when you say it like that, because you have a copy of their 1AC, for example. You know what the plan does. It's right there in front of you. You know what their advantage is. It's leadership. Loss of it causes a war. But it's the little things that you might need to figure out exactly what that is, and how to get them to admit something that will provide you a link to a dissent, give you some ground for a link turn, give you an argument as to how you can meet their interpretation on their T violation. There are many examples, and we'll talk more about specifics when I go through each example. Finally, what's the last goal?
To win the debate.
To win the debate. In order to successfully win the debate, you have to win your arguments. In order to successfully win your arguments, you have to combine goal number one with goal number two. You have to know what they're saying, and you have to use CX as a weapon, as a tool, to solidify your arguments, to make your arguments better. Let's go through some don'ts of cross-examination. Biggest don't, number one. Don't ask open-ended questions. What's an open-ended question? Yeah.
It's a question that can have a variety of answers.
Exactly. For example, I'm going to ask Hunter an open-ended question, and he's going to answer it. Hunter, can you tell me about your leadership advantage?
Oh, yeah, sure. Our first piece of evidence is actually really great on this question. It indicates that SPS would help leadership for a number of reasons. First of all, it would boost our aerospace leadership, which is necessary to prevent other hostile rivals from showing up. Secondly, is our soft power internal link. Our NI evidence indicates that soft power is the only way to boost leadership.
So, what has just happened?
He's using a bunch of CX time.
He's using up all the CX time in something that, and you're allowing him, he got a chance to maybe extrapolate or go beyond what his evidence really says. And who was listening to that?
The judge.
The judge, exactly. So we want to try to focus on closed-ended questions, yes or no questions, right? For example, Hunter, why is your aerospace key to our, why is aerospace critical to your internal link?
Right, our evidence indicates that aerospace is necessary for us to build technology.
Thanks. Wasn't really a closed-ended question, but I got what I wanted out of it, and then we'll move on, right? Do you spend money?
Of course.
Right? That would be a closed question, yes or no question, right? The goal is, don't let your opponent, don't ask a question where your opponent can extrapolate and provide more information than what you were really looking for. Another don't. Don't ask, what does your plan do? Explain the skip to politics dissent to me. Could you explain your topicality violation? These are all things you don't want to ask because you can get the evidence and arguments from them and read it for yourself. We want to be specific with our cross-ex questions. Specific. Some words that we don't want to use in cross-ex. In your own words. Why do we not want to say that?
Toxic?
Huh?
Toxic?
No?
They can interpret their arguments to whatever they want. If it's in their words, then they
Well,
talk
sure,
their
but
words.
didn't they just speak? Didn't they read the 1AC? So wouldn't that be in their own words? Right? You anticipate that they wrote their 1AC. Wouldn't that be in their own words? So fundamentally, it just doesn't make sense. If someone asks me in your own words, what does your plan text do? I'm going to read the plan text right back to you. And you're going to say, no, I meant in your own words. And I'm going to say, those are my own words. Right? So we want to eliminate that from cross-examination questions. Now, one last thing about CX before we talk about the specifics of each speech. Inevitably, somebody's going to be really fast or unclear, and you are going to need to use CX time to figure out what arguments they made. That's okay to do. Can you tell me what the next argument you made after turn, the plan to increase political capital? Yeah, it's no impact. Skip is not key to relations, right? How many people have had that happen? Where you need to get, where either you didn't flow it or you couldn't understand it. Go ahead and raise your hands, right? That's okay to do. It doesn't fall into one of our goals necessarily, but it is something that you have to do in CX. So, we've got the goals of cross-examination. Let's talk about cross-ex of the 1AC. When you're negative, chances are you've gone into the debate with a strategy. Meaning you've gotten the plain text ahead of time, You know what the app is, hopefully, and you've already thought about it back home with your debate coach or with your varsity debaters or on your own. When you debate this case, this is what we're going to say. So in cross-ex of the 1AC, you're going to ask questions that provide you the links to your disads. You're going to ask questions that give you ground for your counterplan. You're going to ask questions that give you some leeway on your case turns. And that's the trickiest part of cross-examination. Because we don't want to come out and say, if we have a spending disad, and we want to get a link to our spending disad, we don't want to come out and say, does the plan spend money? Because what's an answer that's devastating to you?
No.
No. Right? You don't want to ask that. There are ways around that. For example, so the space infrastructure, your inherency evidence says that the space infrastructure is low now, right? So I'm assuming that means that when the plan is implemented, you would have to implement an infrastructure. Yes, that's what our plan does. In fact, our plan text even says infrastructure. Already, that's a spending link. If you're going to institute a big plan, a big space infrastructure, you're going to have to what?
Spend money.
Spend money. You've just got your link to your disad. Right? They can't say, no, we don't create an infrastructure. Because they just admitted in cross-ex. Yes?
Question, okay, say they say something in CX and there's like an argument of theory that you can't use CX questions during the debate round?
Totally disagree. CX is binding. If that were the case, that what you can't use in CX applies into the debate, then why have cross-examination at all? Because I could explain an argument one way and then run something totally different. CX wouldn't matter. Always approach CX as if what is said in CX is binding. If it isn't binding, that's bad for debate because that means it basically moots the reason why we even have cross-examination in the first place. Basically, it allows people to lie and get away with it. Is that fair? Is that fair to a team? Right? Cross-examination is binding. Always go in thinking of that. And use it. That's why CX is a weapon. Question? No. Other things we want to do in cross-ex of the 1AC. If you're going for a critique, and your criticism is you attempt to control and dominate space. That's what your link is. And you want to try to kind of beef up that link. You can ask questions like, so no other country is doing something like the plan now. And of course they're going to say no. So the U.S. would be the first to get up there in space and implement solar power satellites. Yeah. That's a good segue into your link argument that the U.S. perceives space as something of an unconquered frontier that they need to capture before anyone else captures it. Right? So without coming out and saying it, and without the affirmative knowing, you've just gotten a link booster to your security gate. Does everybody understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there are ways that you can ask and frame these questions that don't tip your hand or give away your argument, but at the same time, lay the foundation for the way the negative is going to go. And as a last resort, if you don't understand one of the advantages, ask them about it, but do so in a way in which you control the flow of cross-examination. Not like Hunter did, where Hunter started dominating the cross-ex question, and I just sat there and clock ticked away. That's why we want to ask specific questions. Why is aerospace, for example, critical to hegemony? Why is soft power necessary to prevent war? Those are specific questions instead of just, can you explain your soft power advantage to me? You see the subtle difference?